just sit up here. Okay. That was awesome. Thank you. Hello, AMAC Nation. Good to be here. And hello, Real America's Voice. Good to have our network here today. This is a very special moment, I think, for all of us. We have 6 months to save the country. I think a lot of people look out and they say, what's at stake in November? And the answer is everything. Everything that we've worked for the 247 years of this country. I was on a trip to California a couple months ago. Every so often they let me out of the office. And I was in Florida. I flew into California. Unfortunately, my flight got delayed by about 6 hours. So I got in about 5 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, 2 o'clock in the morning, California time, and I was going to get an Uber, go to the conference hall, and my whole plan was to just lay my head on the window and go to sleep for a few minutes. The driver had a different plan for me, and I thought, oh, God, you're really funny, but I'm so tired I can't have this conversation. He starts talking, gives me his bio. He is a legal immigrant from El Salvador. He fled El Salvador during the height of the Nicaraguan socialist Sandinista wars there. He came here because America was a better place. He told the whole story of how he came here, how much he loves his country, works 3 jobs. He's brought his family here. He now goes back to El Salvador because it has a conservative president right now. It's actually doing well. If you watched CPAC earlier this year, you would have seen the El Salvadoran president and the reforms he's doing. And then he stopped for a second after giving me his bio, and he said, how are we going to save my country? And I thought, well, El Salvador seems like it's doing fine. So I said, I think you're on the path of El Salvador. No, not El Salvador, this country. How can we save? Now, just think about that. A man who fled death squads and socialism and banana republics actually is more worried about the United States of America, where he fled 30 years ago, than the country he fled from. That is how serious the stakes are right now. And that moment in that car, God really blessed me. I was so tired of I don't want to have this conversation. I'm so glad I did, because at the end of the day, it really awakened me to the fact that people, everyday people who are out there, maybe not in the news every day, they're just trying to make ends meet, try to survive the Biden economy. They understand the stakes of what's going to happen in November. They know the future of the country. The America we know is at risk of not being that way if we don't make the right choices in November. So why are we here? We're here to save the country. We're here to learn how each one of us can make a difference in November. And believe me, I think a lot of people have looked out over the years and said, Washington's too big, we can't make a difference. Every single person in this room can make a difference, and that's what AMAC shows every day. All the grassroots works that Rebecca's team and Andy's team does every day. You change things. You get laws passed. You change minds in legislatures. You change minds in Congress. That is a very powerful tool, and it can't be underestimated. People say, Washington doesn't listen. They do listen, and they're going to listen very profoundly in November with the actions that we take. Each one of us can play a role in November. Maybe it's being an election observer. Maybe it's just talking to your neighbor and convincing them that they made the wrong choice in 2020. Every opportunity we have in the next 6 months can go towards that goal of making this country great again, saving it from the abyss that it's hanging over right now. I want to just say one thing. I think Washington's a rather vitriolic place right now, and Republicans fight among themselves right now. You see that a lot in the House. The next 6 months are going to require a discipline, a oaring in the same direction. I think that's what's so exciting about what AMAC does. They get the boats, and they're all oaring in the same direction. Ronald Reagan, I covered my first election in 1984, so the Morning in America election with Ronald Reagan. That was my first campaign experience. And there were 2 things about Reagan that I think are very important. One of them is a cardinal rule of politics he had, and I learned this from George H.W. Bush. I spent a day with George H.W. Bush down in Houston before he died, and he told me of the stories of the night that Ronald Reagan picked him. Everybody thought Reagan was going to pick Gerald Ford to be his vice president, kind of create a super ticket. Reagan didn't feel right about Ford, and so out of the blue, he decides we're going to go with George H.W. Bush, who he had a very vitriolic primary challenge from. And he calls George Bush up, tells him, and then the next morning they get together for breakfast, and President Bush tells me this is how the conversation starts. He says, I look over to the governor and say, Governor, is there anything, any advice you want to give me before I hit the campaign trail? And he looks over at George. He said, yeah, just one thing, George. If you're ever in our foxhole again and you pull the pin on a hand grenade, for God's sake, throw it on the other guys. And it's a very profound statement. But blowing ourselves up in our own foxhole isn't a good option. And I think the Democrats hope that they're going to get that to happen again. It's going to be important for all of us to be in the same foxhole, to realize the enemy is the other side, not our own side. And I think that's the first rule. The second rule is a phenomenon that I think really came alive in the Reagan years, and that is there was a silent majority in America. And maybe they didn't speak up a lot, but when they got to the voter box, they let their will be known. And the silent majority swung a lot of elections and I think kept this country on a good, strong path. A few months ago, I was at a book signing just a few cities over from here. And a young lady came up to me. She said, my parents were Reagan parents, and I love the Reagan era. And they used to say they were part of the silent majority, but I'm pretty convinced of something. Silence isn't an option anymore. Silence is complicity. We have to use our voices. We have to use our minds. We have to use the activism and the speech and the liberties that our founding fathers gave us to save this country. And I think more than ever, this election is an election where we can't be silent. We can't be inactive. You can't win a football game sitting on the bench in the fourth quarter. You got to be in the game. And today, I think what makes this boot camp and the boot camp was just done in Florida is that we're going to give people skills and ideas and relationships and strategies to go out and actually save this country. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things as a journalist, watching the grassroots of America shape this country, keep it from falling over that abyss that we all feel is near. It's an amazing thing to chronicle, and I can't wait to watch and see everything the great AMAC Army does in the next few months, and you're going to be a big part of that. All right, we've got a great program for you today. We're going to be talking about the border. We're going to be talking about election integrity. We're going to talk about parents' rights. So many different issues that our country faces right now, and you're going to get a lot of really pragmatic and smart advice from some of the smartest people I know on how you can make a difference in each of those venues, how you can leave here today and spend the next 6 months making a difference saving this country. Now, to get us started, I want to bring aboard my great friend, Rebecca Weber. I get to co-host a show with her once a month. We're going to do another one here today. She's the CEO of AMAC and also really the grand poobah of all this strategy that we're looking at today. Rebecca does such a great job. She's a good friend. She's a patriot, and she's the reason we're all here today to learn and go out and be a good Army. Rebecca, great to have you here to come on board.
Thank you. Oh, thank you all so much, folks. This is really wonderful. I am delighted to be here with all of you. Welcome to AMAC's and AFPI's Boot Camp for Boomers. Thrilled to see all of you. You know, when I look out at all of you here today, I am just so reminded of the great men and women of this country that really love America, love the freedoms that it affords. And you folks have boldly and courageously decided, you know what, I'm going to show up on a Tuesday morning. And, you know, never ever underestimate the power that one person can make. My father, one man, his idea was to form AMAC. He was an ordinary guy. He owned a small business on Long Island with 5 children. He saw the direction that this country was headed, and he said, I've got to do something. That was one man. Today we have over 2 million Americans that have joined AMAC. By a show of hands, how many people here are AMAC members? Wow, that's just terrific. Thank you so much. This is an easy way for people to get involved. Truly, we give you the vehicle. If you folks have questions after the event today, you can talk to Andy Mangione, Jennifer Bankston, or Bob Carlstrom sitting over here at the table. They'll be happy to help you out. You know, I'm reminded of a phrase that Ronald Reagan once spoke, and that was, he said, freedom is one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for. It must be protected. And we've got to hand it on to our children to do the same. Otherwise, one day in our sunset years, we'll be telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in America to be free. We're not going to let that happen. You're not going to let that happen. Amen. You know, folks, we are facing some major battles, aren't we? I mean, I can hardly recognize what's happened to America. Look at what they're doing to try to disqualify President Donald J. Trump, going after him. What a shame. Terrible what they're doing. But we're battling this deep state. We're battling, there's a culture war, is what there is. And what we see in the legacy news media, it's terrible what they're doing. Labeling concerned parents as extremists, that to me does not make sense. It's like common sense has gone out the door. They want us to ignore common sense altogether. Our federal government, they want you to think that your children and grandchildren belong to the government? No way. We're not going to let that happen. We are in a culture war with an opponent who has labeled concerned parents as domestic terrorists. We've got to do something, folks. If we don't do something, who will. It's on us to do it. We're being lied to when it comes to border security. We're being lied to about a whole lot of things, our public safety. We are being lied to about the massive threat that China presents, right? We need to know about these things, and the left is banking on us falling asleep. And they think a lot of people out there are stupid, but boy, are they wrong, aren't they? They are wrong. So folks, here is the good news. I love to bring good news. The good news is that we don't get our freedoms from a government. We get our rights from God and God alone. That's right. Now, we have seen the Washington swamp really grow so big, so intrusive. We're not going to buy into those falsehoods. What we're going to do, we're going to wear our values like a badge of honor. That's what AMAC members do. Proudly stand up for what you believe in. You know, I love this quote by President John Adams. He once said, "The way to secure liberty is to place it in the people's hands. That is to give them, that's all of you, the power in times to defend it." And that, I think, is so important that we remember that. The whole world is really depending on America. And America is each and every one of you. So, what do? What can we do? Well, the first thing that we should do is vote. We should be telling our friends and our family members to get out there and vote. We should help them if they need help getting to and from. The second thing that we can do is if we see something that doesn't look right, if it looks wrong, feels wrong, say something. Don't stay quiet. And third, tell friends and family about AMAC. Join AMAC. We are the fastest growing, mature, conservative movement in America. So thank you all. Now, I am thrilled to be here with so many amazing people, and I really do hope that you find the information that we share with you informative and educational. We are going to make history. Let's take back America and win in November of 2024.
I love it. That is great. Rebecca, just real quickly, I've been covering politics for 40 years. This effort that you've done, this boot camp for boomers, it's such a brilliant idea. What was the genesis for it?
Well, you know, AMAC, we do a lot, but being face-to-face with people, in my view, is so important. And we have members who say, can you bring local programs to my area? And we said, you know what, let's do that. So this is actually our second boot camp. Our first one was down in the Villages, Florida. And a good friend of mine, Tony Dolan, came up with the name Boot Camp, which was really smart. I thought it was great. You know, I'm not quite a boomer. I guess I'm Gen X, but you're. But that's okay. You don't have to be over the age of 50. But this is great. We're going to be doing a heck of a lot in the coming months and into the future. This is something we don't want to just, you know, do these things in 2024. We want to continue. It's sorely needed here in America.
Oh, it is. And there's so many people willing to step into the void. It just takes something like this to get it going. And it's an amazing thing. As a political reporter, I haven't seen anything like it in a very long time. It looks like really the things that Reagan did in 80 and 84 to move this country forward. So congratulations on a brilliant strategy. Really
thank you so much,
for
John.
all that AMAC does. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, it's going to be time to roll up your sleeves, take out your pads. We're going to get into classes and start learning. Our first conversation, Ambassador Carla Sands. She was your Senate nominee here in Pennsylvania. She's going to walk us through why Pennsylvania is in play, what we can do to save the country. We'll have that right after these commercial messages.